There are plenty of reasons to despise AI right now. Its current implementation just feels very profit driven. It doesn't feel like it's proven to be beneficial to humanity and society, the harm it's doing to the environment. And then there's the harm it's doing to the computing electronics market. And the same goes for the gaming space, where AI is now starting to kind of affect that area in a pretty dramatic way. And among those most affected is Valve. They've recently been on a roll with their hardware releases. Once upon a time, they were like a purely software company, and they've tried to delve into hardware, but it never quite panned out. But then came the Steam Deck, and that kind of revolutionized gaming in a lot of ways. It kind of popularized the idea of like taking your games on the go with a portable handheld PC. It's like the first product of that type that felt really viable, really well thought out, like it functioned at a level that makes sense, at a price point that makes sense. And with that came the announcement of the Steam Machine, which a lot of people are looking forward to, but we still haven't heard much on that front. And all of it is thanks to AI and the way that whole race, that technological race among companies, has caused a massive shortage when it comes to RAM, and it has caused inflation along with it. And same goes for other components like SSDs and GPUs and whatnot that have also been drastically impacted by these recent developments. And so something that we're seeing right now that is unprecedented for the Steam Deck is that if you go to their website and try to purchase a Steam Deck, you will see that they're all completely out of stock. And no, it's not that there's been like this huge surge of demand recently. It's just that there's been a huge shortage of supply, as noted by Valve and Steam itself, right below the items that are listed as out of stock. Quote, Steam Deck OLED may be out of stock intermittently in some regions due to memory and storage shortages. Steam Deck LCD 256 gigabytes is no longer in production, and once sold out will no longer be available. So this model right here is going to be gone forever. And yes, it was a cheaper option, but frankly, you would be remiss to not just go for the OLED version. That screen is just significantly better, and the enhancements made to the Steam Deck through this new enhanced, refreshed OLED version, like it's just worth the upgrade. But yeah, the only time I've ever seen Steam Decks out of stock was when it first launched, when there was this mass rush to get it. And even then, Valve handled the scalping situation really well by having some requirements when it comes to your account and the activity, so that it's impossible to just like make a whole bunch of brand new accounts and pretend to be like a long-time Steam user. The way they sold it directly through their own platform and made the conditions just reasonable enough for the average Joe, but just unreasonable enough for scalpers to not be able to circumvent the system, just made that launch really smooth overall, even if there was a high demand and people were still clamoring to get one and were, struggling to get one. But then eventually things kind of stabilized, and Steam Deck was just always like a steady seller with a steady amount of stock. But thanks to AI, that is no longer the case. OpenAI in particular is the one who kind of kickstarted this whole RAM shortage and inflation situation because of their need to stay competitive and their desire to starve the competition of computing components. They made this like sneaky deal with both SK Hynix and Samsung that ended up consuming 40% of the world's RAM at the time. That percentage might be higher now. But yeah, these are unprecedented times to see that a product like the Steam Deck is out of stock so long after its initial launch. The Steam Deck is a popular device, but demand for it isn't so high that it would cause a situation like this where all of it is out of stock at this current period in time. And if this is what's happening with the Steam Deck, then God knows what the future holds for the Steam Machine, whose launch and availability and pricing will likely also be on some level impeded by the current AI landscape and the way it has completely screwed over consumer electronics and consumer computing parts and that entire landscape and market. When it comes to the Steam Machine, the last update that was provided by Valve was on February 4th, 2026, when they said that we planned on being able to share specific pricing and launch dates by now being February 4th. But the memory and storage shortages you've likely heard about across the industry have rapidly increased since then. The limited availability and growing prices of these critical components mean we must revisit our exact shipping schedule and pricing, especially around Steam Machine and Steam Frame. Our goal of shipping all three products in the first half of the year has not changed, but we have work to do to land on concrete pricing and launch dates that we can confidently announce, being mindful of how quickly the circumstances around both of those things can change. So not only would we likely have all of the details right now if it wasn't for the AI raise that has completely screwed over the computing components and electronics market, I also think that if Valve is struggling to manufacture Steam Decks as a result of the RAM shortage and the inflations that we're seeing across the board when it comes to computing electronics, then Steam Machine will face a similar issue. It is likely a higher priority product because it's a brand new product that they recently announced, and they have to, strike while the iron's hot, while the hype is there for the Steam Machine. They can't delay too long. But then when it does finally launch, I get the sense that, it's going to be incredibly difficult to get one's hands on one of these, and even if you can, the pricing of it might dissuade a lot of people because of the fact that just by the nature of the current state of the economy and the computing electronics market, they have to increase prices by likely a significant amount more than it would have been had this AI situation not become what it is today. I have a feeling that a lot of people won't be happy with the Steam Machine's final price, but do keep in mind that not all of that can be blamed on Valve, especially with the Steam Machine not being subsidized in the way traditional consoles are, because it's not a console, it's a PC that doesn't have any exclusives and the like. And then on top of that, I feel like we would have seen the Steam Machine release much earlier. I really hope that Valve also has a similarly adequate anti-scalper system in place for the Steam Machine, because supply for the Steam Machine will be a lot more constrained compared to the Steam Deck, is the feeling that I get. And I get the sense that once that initial stock of Steam Machines are sold out, the Steam Machine will be out of stock for a while in the same way that the Steam Deck is right now. If they're struggling again to make Steam Decks, then surely they will struggle to make Steam Machines as well. And of course, Valve is not the only one being screwed over by AI. In this recent article from news outlet The Verge, it kind of details all the areas that have been severely impacted by the shortage and inflation of RAM, whether it's your phone, whether it's gaming devices, whether it's laptops, and basically any electronic that has RAM in it, which is practically any smart device. You know what I mean? Even your fridges these days have smart elements, so your TVs have RAM in them. All that stuff will go up in price. Things that you might not even think about. Wi-Fi routers are expected to explode in price due to RAM shortage. Memory now accounts for 20% of the total cost of a Wi-Fi router, up from 3%. And the domino effect that the DRAM shortage and inflation has on other computing components like SSDs and GPUs means that those aspects are seeing price increases as well. SSDs, for example, now apparently cost 16 times more than HDDs due to AI supply chain crisis. When you look at prices of GPUs, you look up like a 5090, which once upon a time used to cost like $2,000. You see them at Amazon now close to $4,000 to $5,000, which is just, untenable. And it all began with this right here when OpenAI's Stargate project consumed up to 40% of global DRAM output after inking this deal with Samsung and SK Hynix to the tune of up to 900,000 wafers per month. Here's another individual reporting how GPUs are also in short supply. SSDs are 4 times their price this last year, and hard drive manufacturers already sold out for the rest of the year with shortages expected until 2028. So it's not even just that the prices are ridiculous now, it's just the lack of availability for all these components. Expect a lot of components to be sold out when, say, you need to replace components or when you're trying to upgrade your existing computers. And all this is also causing not only CPU prices to increase, but for CPU sales to crash due to the fact that people are less incentivized than ever right now to upgrade their PCs. And yeah, the decline of CPU sales is pretty dramatic, with apparently about 26,100 units sold compared to roughly 63,840 units sold in January of 2025, with the 26,100 figure referring to January of 2026, just this last month. So that's a decline of around 59%. Basically, what everyone's about to do is stay put and hold on to their current PC build as much and as long as possible, ride out this currently inflated market in the hopes that one day it'll dip enough that that's when it'll be time for people to be able to buy computing components en masse at a price that's reasonable. And it's not just consumers who'll be forced to do that. Same goes with hardware manufacturers like Valve when it comes to the Steam Deck and the Steam Machine. Like, they could buy up a bunch of RAM right now and continue manufacturing Steam Decks, but they will sell Steam Decks at such a loss at the current price point because of just how much RAM prices have increased that they're also likely waiting for the right moment to be able to restock Steam Decks when they're able to accrue RAM at a more reasonable price point where these MSRPs make sense to sell these Steam Decks at. And they're likely waiting for the same thing with the Steam Machine. They're still evaluating the situation. They can't land on a concrete price and launch date due to the fact that circumstances are just constantly quickly evolving. Prices are consistently fluctuating. Shortages are expected to last many years. And so how drastically all of this will impact the current landscape of computing electronics, gaming electronics, so on and so forth, I think we're just starting to see the effects of that. And once the full effects of it are felt, I think people are going to be really, really pissed at how expensive everything is about to become and how unavailable and low supply everything is about to become, especially for commodities like the Steam Machine and the Steam Deck, hardware that, people take great joy in due to the fact that it allows them to conveniently escape real life for a second and engage in some entertainment, a very important aspect of life. And that's an area that will be severely compromised, especially for fans of gaming. And beyond Valve, there are now reports that Nintendo is planning to increase the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 in the not-so-distant future. Next-gen consoles like the PlayStation 6 has seen a delay to like 2028 to 2029. Though, as far as I'm concerned, that's actually a good thing. I think we've nowhere near maximized the full potential of the PlayStation 5. But you can clearly see the massive disruption this has had on tons of companies' plans for the future, and Valve is definitely among the most affected. Like, their timing of releasing the Steam Machine could not have been worse, and we have OpenAI and just the AI landscape in general to thank for all of this. So while AI company CEOs will continue to insist that all of this will be to the benefit of consumers, right now we have seen nothing but a technology that is so powerful that we're seeing tons of irresponsible uses for it, combined with the fact that the greedy and rushed way in which they're pursuing AI and trying to win this race has negatively impacted the consumers economically as well as entire markets that consumers heavily rely on, not just for gaming and entertainment, but also for all their essential electronics needs that will become a lot less accessible over the next few years before this economic situation stabilizes. But yeah, with AI continuing to be an ongoing development, it's always good to be aware of what's going on in this area, and this is the latest on that front and how Valve in particular has been severely affected by this alongside other gaming companies. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this. Steam Deck being out of stock, Steam Machine being delayed in its launch date and pricing announcement, and what you think the future holds for Valve, and how do you think Valve will be mitigating this situation as they head into a massive product launch that is not being benefited by the AI companies' hoarding of RAM and the shortages and inflations of computing components. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.